Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
And glad to have with us on our live line this morning, Steuben County Democratic Chair and Hornell IDA consultant, Shawn Hogan. Shawn, thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Brian.
Well, Shawn Hogan, looking at EmpireReportNewYork.com, which is similar in its layout and design to the Drudge Report. It says, Assembly approves driver's licenses for undocumented. Senate now in the driver's seat. What do you make of that news?
Well, up until, prior to 2001, prior to 9/11, the licenses could be issued to non-citizens or unregistered aliens, immigrants. And that was primarily for farm workers because there was a lot of migrants that worked in the agricultural industry in this state, and they did a lot of driving for agricultural purposes, and they needed the licenses. After 2001, after 9/11, they revoked that privilege, and now the state assembly has revisited that area. I remember when Governor Spitzer was first elected, he tried to do it, and there was a big backlash nationally, and from county clerks who ran DMV offices in some counties, kind of pushed back upon it. I think if there's specific licenses for specific industries that these people, that would help the industry, help agriculture, and it's implemented correctly, then, it's something that I think I could support. But if it's just wholesale licenses to the undocumented, without any restrictions or without any oversight, then I would have a hard time, supporting it. But I haven't seen the legislation. I think it was just agreed upon in the last several days, and it hasn't passed the Senate yet. I think there probably will be some issues in the Senate from Democrats. I know that there was 14 Democrats that voted against it in the Assembly. So we'll see. I think if implemented correctly and has appropriate controls, it could be a benefit to our agricultural industry. But if it's not, then it could cause some problems. So we'll wait and see, and then I'll probably have a more intelligent comment when I see the full legislation.
Talking to Shawn Hogan this morning, also see on the Empire Report NewYork.com website, Cynthia Nixon says she lost, but her movement won big. Is that because of Cynthia Nixon, or is that because of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or both?
Well, I don't know, and I think that AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, it was kind of an anomaly. She beat in a primary where there was 4,500 votes cast. She beat Joe Crowley, who was a longtime congressman from Queens, who actually took the voters for granted and didn't actively campaign as hard as he should have. I mean, he was a shoo-in, and also Joe Crowley maintained a residence in his Queens district, but he moved his family to the suburbs of Washington, and his children enrolled in schools in Virginia. So I think that kind of sent a negative message to some of the voters. But, at 29 years old, I think she's a spirited young lady with convictions. I don't agree with her on a lot of her pronouncements, and I really don't think that the the Democratic Party as a whole is marching in lockstep with her, and I don't think she frightens anybody. I think she's made too much of her victory. It was an anomaly and not a movement, I would say. So, I don't put too much credence in that she has the sway that people think she has with the Democratic Party. It just doesn't exist. As evidenced by that is that all the upstate Democratic Party chairmen, opposed the legislation that was put forth by the Assembly for farm workers, as far as paying overtime and things of that nature. If you notice the press release from Judith Hunter, who is president of the Democratic World Conference, which consists of all upstate Democratic counties, and came out with a statement saying that they oppose the legislation that's proposed in the Assembly about farm workers' overtime. So there is not a lockstep, march to that tune, so to speak. And the reason they oppose it is because they know that agriculture is number 2 industry in New York State, and that any more restrictions on our agricultural partners, our farmers, would hurt them. This is troubling times for farmers because, number one, those who are in the dairy industry, the milk prices are at an all-time low, and those who grow crops or truck farmers, so to speak, they're dealing with tariffs that have hurt them immeasurably, that have been imposed by the Trump administration. So it's a tough time for agriculture. So I think that the people, the Assembly members and the Senate members who don't really realize the importance of agriculture in our state are sometimes a little misguided. So I think you'll see that the Democratic Party is not marching in lockstep with some of the more progressive or left-wing members of the Democratic Party.
Talking to Shawn Hogan this morning, you brought up agriculture. Former State Senator Kathy Young, who resigned from the State Senate and went to work at Cornell University. She's the newly appointed director of the Cornell University Agritech office. And it's kind of an interesting interview she gave to Cornell University. I'm reading this from the Cornell website. Her father went to Cornell University, I believe, as an agriculture major, and she's working on different plans for technology and innovation at Cornell for agriculture. Do you think Kathy Young's presence there will help farmers in this area in any way, Shawn Hogan?
Well, I think so. I think Kathy Young was a very effective representative for her Senate district, which consisted of, Chautauqua, Cattaraugus, Allegheny, and parts of Livingston County. She was very well thought of by people on both sides of the aisle. And, I know that the agriculture is very near and dear to her heart, and I think that she will, I think she'll be a positive force in her position with Cornell University.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We'll talk some national and local issues when we get back with Shawn Hogan. Stay with us.
It wouldn't be Father's Day weekend without a trip to B&D Stove's annual open house, Saturday, June 15th, 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. This year, Dave's back in the grilling business. Check out the Green Mountain Grills with Jim Beam bourbon-flavored cooking pellets. B&D Stoves will have one-day deals on all stoves by Harmon, Lopi, Legacy, Central Boiler, and more. Save $5 per ton on pellets and coal. These early bird prices are only available on June 15th. Bring the whole family and enjoy lunch from Corning Catering. B&D Stoves just off exit 35 in Howard.
Checking in now with meteorologist Rob Carolyn. And Rob, is this really June?
No, it's not. Meteorologically speaking, Brian, the charts look more like something we'd see in the fall or the winter, with one area of low pressure out over the western side of Lake Erie, another one coming up along the coast of Virginia. That's highly unusual for this time of year, but it's what we're dealing with. Got a big dip in the upper parts of the atmosphere with the jet stream, and again, that's not indicative of June either, but we've got to deal with what Mother Nature's throwing our way. Take the umbrella today, folks. You'll need it. We've got scattered showers in the forecast. It'll be breezy as that wave of low pressure passes by to our west, the other one to our east. They'll eventually combine up over eastern Canada into one storm. Temperatures are going to stay cool right through tonight as scattered showers continue. Nighttime lows will be 50 to 55. Tomorrow, any showers end in the morning. Sun will try to come out at times tomorrow afternoon. We're going to be breezy. Highs will be 65 to 70. Partly to mostly cloudy and 55 tomorrow night. Then clouds on Saturday with a chance of showers late 70 to 75.
Thank you, Rob. Back with Shawn Hogan this morning, live on the Newsmaker Show. Wanted to ask you about the New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio campaign for president. His polling numbers are not good, but he wants to get into the debates. What do you make of that, Shawn?
Well, I think there's so many candidates, they have to set some kind of parameters. You know, I know Bill de Blasio. I've known Bill for probably 25 or 30 years. He worked for Andrew Cuomo when Andrew Cuomo was secretary to HUD. And prior to when he was secretary to HUD, he ran the CDBG program for HUD, and Bill de Blasio worked for him. And Bill de Blasio also worked for Mario Cuomo many years ago. So I know Bill. And I like Bill, but I just don't think he's going to be a viable presidential candidate. So, you know, being that there's 24, 25 candidates, I think they have to winnow the field down. Otherwise, you don't get an effective reading of the top candidates, who are ultimately going to be the ones that are going to have to decide who is going to be the candidate. So I think the Republicans had that problem. 3 years ago or 3.5 years ago, when there were so many Republican candidates and they had the two-tiered thing, no one ever got any traction because, that's how I think that Trump rose to the top, because they couldn't get their message out. So I think that having 24, 25 candidates isn't really an advantage, and I think that it should be winnowed down as quickly as possible. And I think that's what these debates will do on the first debates on the 26th and 27th of this month of June.
And as long as we're talking about upcoming June events, what do you think of the state Senate primary that's coming up there? Kurt Crandall, the Allegheny County Legislature, and Chautauqua County Executive George Borrello have that primary coming up. Then you have the Democrat candidate Morgan. Is it Austin Morgan or Morgan Austin?
I think it's Austin Morgan. I don't know him. Obviously, he doesn't represent our senatorial district.
Right. He would be more Allegheny County.
He's Allegheny and Livingston and Chautauqua and Cuyahoga counties. I don't know. I know Kurt Crandall. I have a lot of respect for him. We've worked together. I think that he is a strong candidate, and I wish him well. I have no skin in the game, obviously, as he's running for in a Republican primary. I guess it'll be all who has the best ground game and who gets the vote out. People aren't used to voting because the law changed in January, which really kind of turned upside down the political calendar in New York State. That's why people were passing petitions in February and had to get them in April. And it was just the law was passed so quickly and implemented immediately, and so people are confused. People who are politically active, but the general public too. I mean, I don't think too many are even aware that there's going to be a primary in June for this elected position. So whoever gets their voters out and has the best ground game is going to win that primary.
On the Democratic race for the White House, Joe Biden in the lead there, the former vice president and former Delaware U.S. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. Her campaign polling numbers are not very good. Joe Biden's are. And then you have all those other candidates, Bernie Sanders, Mayor Pete. What do you, and the list goes on and on. Your thoughts on the Democrats' run for the White House, Shawn?
Well, again, I don't think I know Kristen Gillibrand. I've worked with her. I mean, I like her individually as a person. I think that she made a lot of mistakes prior to announcing her candidacy. Number one, she was a driving force to move Al Franken out of the Senate without due process. That upset a lot of people. A lot of big fundraisers and donators to the Democratic cause and to her cause, and I don't think she really understood at the time. You know, I think she's a big activist in the Me Too movement, and she's all about women's rights. But I think the knee-jerk reaction on Al Franken, denying him due process without any review of his case by the ethics committee, anything like that, and forcing him to resign was a mistake. And I think that has hurt her, and it hurt her credibility, and that's why she's not gaining any traction. So she's going nowhere in this presidential race. And I don't think Bill de Blasio is. I think that Joe Biden probably is the odds-on favorite if he, doesn't shoot himself in the foot, he probably will end up being the nominee. But it's a long time away. I mean, you have formidable opponents. Kamala Harris is a very intelligent woman. You got Elizabeth Warren, who's really seemed to be catching fire, and this Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders are the top contenders at this point. But I wouldn't count out some dark horses. I think Beto O'Rourke might come on, Cory Booker. The former governor of Colorado. All those people have decent messages, common sense messages, and more blue collar people focused. So anything can happen. It's a long way away, November of 2020. So obviously there'll be a national convention sometime next July or August in 2020, they'll select a candidate, but it's a long time between then and now. So I'll reserve any further comments and kind of watch the process play out and see who rises to the top.
Talking with Shawn Hogan. Now, if you could put on your, you've been wearing your Steuben County Democratic Chairman hat. Now, if you could put on that Hornell Industrial Development Agency hat. Recently, St. James, and this was a week ago today, had a ribbon-cutting ceremony, and I know you're on the hospital board of directors still. They had a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the St. James UR Medicine's Women's Imaging and Breast Cancer Center. Any thoughts on that, Shawn?
Well, listen, I think that as the hospital as the medical office building matures and we get the specialists in there and things like that, that's huge. I mean, I went on the tour having the equipment, the state-of-the-art equipment that we have in our area, in our community, to serve the needs of women. They have a 3D mammography machine. They have the most recent state-of-the-art sonograms. So as far as women's health goes, I mean, there's the imaging products and who reads the images are second to none in our region. So, I mean, and as the hospital is brand new, stated when that opens in 2020, with all brand new equipment and the floor layout, healthcare in our region can get nothing but better, and it will be it's a model for rural healthcare for not just the state but for the nation. You know, this is groundbreaking. This groundbreaking regional healthcare concept that has been developed, you know, with the rural hospitals in our region is, like I say, groundbreaking. In other states, they're closing hospitals. And St. James is probably one of the few new hospitals being built in the nation. Other than, you know, in the last 4 or 5 years, the Corning Hospital was built as a new hospital. But St. James is a new hospital for a very rural area, unheard of. So it's a feather in the cap to the people at St. James and everyone who fought hard. Feather in the cap to our community to save the hospital. Also, in our wildest dreams, did we think we'd be getting the money to build a new one? So we're blessed. We're fortunate. But it's all great because you need solid health care if you're going to create jobs, if you're going to grow the economy. So without health care, without the very best health care, you're dead in the water as far as economic development goes. The same thing with schools. All these pieces of the puzzle are coming together. Recently, Hornell's gotten some very positive national headlines through the Wall Street Journal and through CBS News in regard.
Yeah, that was my last question for you, Shawn. We're down to the last 30 seconds or so. Your thoughts on the Alstom story on CBS about the Amtrak deal?
Well, it's great. It's great publicity for this community, and it shows that what's going on. Sometimes Hornell doesn't get the credit that it deserves for everything it's accomplished as a small city of less than 10,000 people. We're fortunate that the IDA and Jim Griffin and the previous members of the IDA were fortunate that they had the foresight to latch on to the shops and purchase those shops, knowing that was our history and it's proving to be our future.
And with that, we do have to leave it, Shawn, due to network obligations, but I want to thank you so much for coming on.
No problem. Talk to you later.
Thank you, Shawn.